That went on for a little while, 15 to 30 minutes probably, in my estimation, for what I recall that night. At one point, when I saw things looking fairly calm on the inside of the mall, and the closing looked like it was going pretty well on the inside, I ended up going outside and getting back in my vehicle and was going to start driving the perimeter. And of course, when everybody was being forced out so fast, that of course was creating a traffic problem. The lot was really blocked up. Ingress and egress to the parking area or to the parking lot around the mall was really getting stacked up and packed up pretty heavily. So once I got outside and I actually made my way around to the front of the mall, I ran into two LMPD commanders that were old friends of mine, Lieutenant Simpson from the 6th Division and Sergeant Robinson from the 5th Division. And once I saw them, now I know I've got other agencies showing up, and based upon my previous experience, we needed to do a couple of things of importance. One was establish a command post. So I told the lieutenant and the sergeant, I said, right down there on the corner by the Cinemark Theater, we're going to take over that corner and we're going to establish our command post right there. They said, okay, well, we'll meet you down there. And I said, if you see any other commanding officers that show up from any other divisions or other agencies, tell them to come there, and then we'll formulate our larger plan to deal with this situation that's going on here tonight. So they did that, and I finally got to that area. While I was moving to our future command post there at the corner of the Cinemark theaters, an off-duty officer from our department and an off-duty sheriff from a deputy from the sheriff's department, they were working inside the Cinemark. And they came outside when they saw all the people running by. And this is when I heard on the radio, not a good indicator when it comes to a law enforcement officer, not something you really want to hear. But one of these officers got on the radio and said that they were being surrounded by over 100 people just outside the door of the Cinemark. So as two police officers, you say, yeah, well, they're in uniform, and yeah, they've got guns and tasers and nightsticks and all that. That doesn't matter. You're surrounded by 100 people. That's not a good thing. So the officer on the radio, I remember his voice cracked, and he immediately called for some help, some assistance. And that's when I rounded the corner and I went straight to that area, and 3 J-Town officers met me there. And for now 6 of us that were there, we, using our bullhorn and our police vehicles, we dispersed that crowd and got them away from those 2 officers that were surrounded. In the police profession, in the police business, the dispatcher put out what is known as a 1030. 1030 is a universal police code for officer in trouble. Now, when that went out, that was put out on every police radio channel in this county. Our radio system, LMPD's radio system, the Jefferson County Sheriff's radio system. And when a 1030 gets dropped, as we say on the air, that's when the cavalry starts heading your way. And that's what happened in this case. That's when the numbers really started going in our favor, meaning police presence started increasing rapidly at that time. Officers were coming code 3. Code 3 simply means people are now arriving with lights and siren on to the location, and that was due to that 1030 that was put out that on those 2 officers that were surrounded by the theater that night. Now we've got folks from St. Matthews, J-Town, LMPD, a couple of small city police departments arrived. I was told later on that even the ranger, the park ranger from EP Tom Sawyer, came to help. When it was all said and done, the number that I was given at the end of the night was we ended up having approximately 65 police units on scene. in and around the area of the mall to handle this situation. So now the dust is settling a little bit, it's getting a little calmer. It's time to establish our command and control. So all those police commanders from all those different agencies met me there on the corner by the Cinemark theaters. And I told them what my plan of action was. And it was simply this. We're starting to have good numbers of police officers arrive, but from different agencies and different radio systems. Now, don't get me wrong. Today we can all talk on one radio, and that's a good thing. But I also know that people like to work together with their people. So what I did, the first thing I did is I established 3 zones. First zone was the mall, St. Matthews property itself. I told all St. Matthews police officers to go to the mall, St. Matthews property. I directed my LMPD commanders, I said, have your personnel take what we will call the middle sector, which was just immediately to the west. There's a little strip shopping center there called Bluegrass Manor. And that's where Whole Foods and Toys R Us, the Taco Bell, that's where all those businesses are located. And I told them to take from across the street at the Outback restaurant down to the traffic light at Bowling Boulevard and Sherburne Lane. So that became our middle sector. And then I told Major Payne and Sergeant Meredith of J-Town, I said, have your J-Town personnel take the Shelbyville Road Plaza and anything to the west of that if this spills down Shelbyville Road. So now we've got clear, defined areas of responsibility. That was the first thing we did. In the meantime, a phenomenal asset that I actually used to be in charge of years ago when I was an LMPD lieutenant, the air unit arrived on scene. LMPD's air unit, Air 20, arrived on scene. And I know both the pilots that were in the helicopter that night, both skilled pilots, and they remained overhead for probably an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. And basically, I told everyone to, go into basically a sheepdog mindset. The good sheepdog, there's all the sheep in the field, and all he does is run around, make sure nobody strays away. So basically what we were trying to do is I told everyone, just watch the groups of people, because they were all over the place. Large groups of individuals now are splintering off, and anywhere from 10 to 50 people in different areas all around the mall, across from the mall, Bluegrass Manor, across Shelbyville Road, and all the restaurants across the street, from McDonald's to Chick-fil-A to Arby's to Outback. So people were now just spread out in the area. And the air unit is a phenomenal asset, because obviously it can take in the whole big snapshot of something, just like that camera there is doing right now. But yet from an aerial perspective. And those guys called in when they would see people ducking off into the darkness, into the bushes or whatever, out of sight. They would zoom down, light them up, and we would dispatch. They would tell me that they would advise the on-scene commander, and I would dispatch police units, marked ground units, to those areas, and they would disperse. And 99% of the time, it was peaceful dispersal. Once these people would be told, you need to move to an area, I told them, I said, look, if they're underage, meaning under 18, I said, let's tell them, call your parents to come pick you up, or if you came here by public transportation, then move towards the public transportation system. Go to the bus stop. If that's how you got here, then go to the bus stop. So that pretty much remained the order of the day and the business at hand for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, I would say, from the time I got the call that things were turning bad there at the mall itself.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So would you say it was how severe would you say this type of thing was on relative to other mobs and such?
Yeah, it from the way it was being described to me before my arrival, listening to the radio traffic of our officers that were on scene before I got there, and then seeing it with my own eyes. Here's you got sometimes an old policeman like me can take a snapshot of things that he experienced in the past and put this in perspective a little better, I think. So from my perspective, I've worked major protests in the past. I've worked the Derby infield when it wasn't as fun as it is today, when it was literally, once everybody got drunk, it became a fist fight fest from the middle of the afternoon until dark when the races were over with, to responding to West Broadway and the situations that used to occur in the West Broadway corridor. Take a look at that from my perspective, and then you bring this thing now that I've experienced on December 26th of last year, and I'm going to tell you it was a major civil disturbance, without a doubt. I know some people have been tossing around, was it a riot, wasn't it a riot? You know, you can whip out the Kentucky Revised Statute definition of riot, and you know what, it could probably fit under there. But here's the thing, while we had people running and knocking people down, people stealing and looting as they were running by kiosks inside of the mall, I don't care what you call it. If it doesn't belong to you, you didn't stand at the cash register, you didn't pay for it, you're stealing it, and if you're doing it while you're running away and grabbing a stack full of stuff, that's called looting. So some of the behavior, yes, was definitely related to riotous situations, but I called it most definitely a major civil disturbance that night because of the activity. And then the things that were going on with people getting run over by the mob,